Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and on today's show, I'm going to be laying out 5 ways that new Steelers head coach Mike McCarthy is an upgrade over previous Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin here in the Steel City. Now, before we get into the content here today, we do have some new merch for you guys to take advantage of up on our website right now for St. Patrick's Day. It's our Steel City Drinking Team t-shirts. Helped design this t-shirt myself with our design team here at Chat Sports. So if you guys want to check it out today, it's a limited edition t-shirt that will only be here for a limited time before St. Patrick's Day. It's only $29.99. So if you guys want to take advantage of this here right now, and guys, the more that we sell, the more t-shirts that we sell, the more merch opportunities that we're going to get. When the Steelers make trades for players this offseason and sign players in free agency and draft new players, and every holiday that comes up, we're going to have different merch opportunities for you guys right here on Steelers Talk. But we got to prove to our bosses here at Chat Sports that we can sell this merch. So you guys have been asking for merch for quite a while. We've got it up on our website right now if you guys want to buy some piece of Steelers Talk apparel. Chatsports.com/pitgreen is the link that's down there in the comments and description of today's show. If you make a purchase today, I'll greatly appreciate it. All right, so first, I want to acknowledge the one way in which I think we're downgrading at the head coaching position, going from Mike Tomlin to Mike McCarthy, and I think that area is leadership and culture building. Okay, I think Mike Tomlin is one of the best culture building leaders in NFL history, if I'm being quite frank with you guys. The way that his players fight for him and buy into what he's saying and in the path that he lays out for a specific team, there's just almost nobody with the charisma, with the ability to command a locker room the way that Mike Tomlin does, and the way to inspire not only respect but also love from his players. Like, players do not start bawling when you announce you're leaving the team unless they absolutely love you, and that's exactly what happened in the final team meeting with Mike Tomlin. It was his greatest strength. It was one of the main reasons why his teams never, despite any injuries or adversity, ever really quit on a season, and that's one of the main reasons why this Steelers team in his tenure never had a losing season, is because Mike Tomlin was always able to get these guys to be motivated and to play hard for him and each other, and that was really the main strength that Mike Tomlin brought to the table as the leader of this organization. And for any team and for any head coach coming in, it doesn't matter if it's Mike Tomlin, Chris Shula, whoever they could have hired for this job, it's always going to be tough to replace that aspect of what Mike Tomlin brought to the table, because he really was a one-of-one unicorn type of leader that is just, you can't find it. You know, it's just such a special trait that Tomlin had. He obviously had his other faults that we'll talk about later in the show here that I think McCarthy fixes, but I do think that leadership and culture building aspect to Tomlin's profile is something that we're probably not going to get at the same level as a Mike McCarthy. But with that said, I do think that there are many things that Coach McCarthy brings to the table as the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers that are upgrades over Coach Tomlin. I think when you put everything together, I think that this team is actually in a better position to take that next step to 12 or 13 wins and, go from a team that's just competing for a playoff spot to a team that could potentially compete for a Super Bowl under Big Mike's tenure here in the Steel City. So let's start with the first thing that I think is an upgrade over Tomlin, which is that Mike McCarthy is very open to embracing analytics, AI, technology, all these different things that are kind of the new wave. And people talk about we want to modernize the Steelers organization. And I think that Mike McCarthy, even though he's 62 years old and an 18-year NFL head coaching veteran, he seems very open to embracing analytics, embracing AI, all these different new aspects that are, starting to be implemented in the National Football League and how NFL teams are run. And under Mike Tomlin, the Steelers were tied for the least amount of analytics professionals on the staff with just 2. Some teams like the Los Angeles Rams and others and the Chargers and some of these other, more quote-unquote modern franchises, they have like double-digit analytic professionals, and the Steelers only had 2. Mike Tomlin was not really a big believer in analytics. He used them as a quote-unquote tool, but he never relied on them the way that some other coaches and organizations do around the National Football League. This is what Mike Tomlin had to say about analytics. You can take analytics to baseball and things like that, but football is always going to be football. I got a lot of respect for analytics and numbers, but I'm not going to make judgments based on those numbers. The game is the game. It's an emotional one played by emotional and driven men. That's an element of the game you can't measure. Oftentimes, decisions such as that weigh heavily in the equation. And, Tomlin famously said a couple years ago, quote, stats are often for losers. So, Tomlin was somebody that wasn't really, embracing the analytics revolution in professional sports and in professional football. He was much more of a people person. Because his greatest strength was leadership and motivation and, player relations-based stuff, I can understand why that was, not to mention he was hired, before the 2010. So he was certainly an older school type of coach. But frankly, now that we're into the 2020s, we're midway through the 2020s, him saying stuff like stats are for losers and, analytics are a tool, but I'm not going to rely on them. He sounds a lot like a scout from Moneyball, right? Where these guys are talking about, how ugly somebody's girlfriend is something that, should be, put into the equation as to how good of a baseball player that they are. And it's like they're looking for Fabio. And, I think that the philosophy that Tomlin brought to the table of kind of old school, kind of instincts-based, not, going by the analytics and the numbers and the trends, I think that showed up in his game management where he very consistently did not go for it on fourth downs. He would punt the ball when he was supposed to go for it a lot. In fact, I think he ranked number 1 in the National Football League last year in punting in situations where the analytics said to go for it. I think that bringing in a guy like Mike McCarthy, who's somebody that's very open to embracing the analytics revolution in the National Football League, is a move that is actually going to modernize the Steelers organization, even though Mike McCarthy, as we sit here today, is the oldest head coach in the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is what Mike has to say about analytics. It's a big part of my coaching. I smile when I say analytics because it really is the foundation of how I look at a lot of things, and it's helped me develop a check and balance system, protocol and how you assess the game, organization, workload capacity, efficiency, all of those things. Analytics is a great asset, and not only is he going to be implementing a greater analytics department and an emphasis on analytics here in Pittsburgh, it also sounds like Big Mike is going to be potentially embracing AI and some of those applications as well in the way that the Steelers do business under his tenure. He says it's exciting what's going on with AI. We have some opportunities to look into that a little deeper. If it helps, you definitely want to look at it, but there's always the education of these things. But how do you apply it to the game in real time? That's really always the real challenge. Now, I think the common misconception with Mike McCarthy is that, we're hiring another, longtime veteran head coach that's an older guy, 62 years old, therefore he's not going to be embracing the new school, modernized type of ways of doing business in the National Football League like Mike Tomlin. But I actually think McCarthy is different than Tomlin in a lot of ways in terms of embracing, the more modern elements of how to run an NFL organization. And I think even though you're hiring a 62-year-old guy, he's going to help modernize this organization moving forward. And I think that will be, in the long run, a good thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. What is your confidence level in Coach Mike McCarthy at this juncture? Do you put it on a scale of 1, meaning not confident at all, this guy absolutely sucks, to 10 being this is the best hire of the cycle, he's going to win us a Super Bowl, all that different stuff? Put it on a scale of 1 to 10 for me down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at GLD. While I tell you about today's sponsor, give me an answer to today's pinned question down there in the comments. And now let's have a word from our sponsor today at GLD. And let's be real, guys, buying men's jewelry nowadays is a complete nightmare. Most of the time, it's low-quality junk that just snaps after a week, or it's insanely overpriced with ridiculous markups. That's why I rock with GLD. Use code CHAT to get 50% off at GLD.com today. GLD has completely changed the game in men's jewelry. You're getting quality pieces that are built to last without breaking the bank. And unlike a lot of other companies, GLD only uses real gold. None of that cheap stuff. Every single stone is meticulously hand set, plus their proprietary production process makes sure you're getting the highest quality jewelry possible. You can literally see and feel the difference. And guys, I've actually got my pendant from GLD with me here today. I absolutely love it. It absolutely shines when I'm walking down the street on Steelers game days. I wear this on our watch parties a lot because I just love the feeling I get when I put on a new new chain. It just hits absolutely differently, guys, compared to when you're not wearing a chain. It elevates your whole fit. The confidence, the compliments that I get, the way that I carry myself, all change instantly when I wear my GLD piece. And GLD has everything that you could possibly want, from chains to pendants to rings, earrings, and even fully iced out watches if that's your thing. Whatever your style, they've got you covered. And listen, don't just take my word for it, guys. Over 2 million customers and 50,000 five-star reviews back it up. Not to mention, it's worn by some of the biggest names out there like Justin Bieber, Micah Parsons, Tyreek Hill, Malik Neighbors, A$AP Rocky, and a ton more. The best part, every single piece from GLD is guaranteed for life. It's literally built to last the rest of your life, just like your love for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Work hard and change the game right now with GLD, and they are making shopping easy for you guys. For a limited time only, new customers get an insane deal. Use code CHAT to get 50% off at GLD.com. That's 50% off with code CHAT at GLD.com. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. And a big thank you to GLD for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. Another way that I think head coach Mike McCarthy is an upgrade over previous head coach Mike Tomlin is the focus on the offensive side of the ball. This is the first time in Steelers history where we have had an offensive-minded head coach. And, I think one of the biggest faults of Mike Tomlin is that he just didn't really get offensive football, especially in the modern day NFL. The offensive coordinators that he would hire would run very older school style schemes. And, it just always felt like the Steelers, especially towards the end of Tomlin's tenure, were a step behind schematically to the rest of the league. Now, in the last 2 years of Tomlin's tenure under Arthur Smith, he did get back to league average offensively. That's good. But, during the Matt Canada years, you were one of the worst offenses in the National Football League. Tomlin was infamous for wanting to avoid the middle of the field, to avoid turnovers, but that would limit some of the explosive plays that the Steelers offense could generate. And it just always felt like the Steelers were leaving meat on the bones. And of course, they didn't do a good enough job addressing the wide receiver position in the last several years here during the Mike Tomlin era. But now that you have Mike McCarthy, he's somebody that rarely has non-top 10 seasons when he's running the offense. Okay, usually the only seasons where he's not, getting at least an above league average offense is when his quarterback gets hurt for like the entire season, like Dak Prescott in 2023 or 2020, I should say, and then 2024 for Dak Prescott again when the year that he got fired. Then Aaron Rodgers when he broke his collarbone. Those seasons are the years where Mike Tomlin or that Mike McCarthy usually doesn't have top 10 years. But if his quarterback is healthy, usually he has a top 10 offense, and he's had 4 number 1 scoring offenses in 18 years as an NFL head coach. That's over 20% of the seasons that he's been a head coach. He's led the number 1 scoring offense in the entire National Football League. So having that focus, I think, is important because this is an offensive league, guys. You have to be able to be a top 10 offense to put yourself in contention to win a Super Bowl nowadays. I think Mike McCarthy helps the Steelers get there, at least down the road. And then another big reason why I'm a big fan of the McCarthy hire, and one of the biggest reasons why the Steelers probably made this decision, is because of his history as a quarterback developer. And, I think a really good sign of a really great quarterback developer, guys, is, what does a quarterback look like when you start working with them, and then how does he look after you're done and after you leave and you part ways? I think, quarterbacks, look a lot better after working with Mike McCarthy than where he found them. And I think that's a sign of a really great quarterback developer. And, I think the reason why McCarthy is so good with quarterbacks is because he knows quarterback fundamentals. I mean, he worked all the way back in Kansas City with Paul Hackett, developing, his skill set as a quarterback coach and, footwork and throwing mechanics and all these different things. McCarthy is well known for his acumen as a developer of QB fundamentals, but also he knows how to teach the game. His offense requires a high level of football IQ from his quarterbacks because of how much freedom he gives at the line of scrimmage, because of the amount of option routes that he gives, specifically to slot wide receivers, and how that requires the quarterback and wide receiver to both read the defensive coverage in order to be on the same page. It just forces these quarterbacks to really hone in their football IQ, which is why we've seen guys like Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott develop into some of the more cerebral passers in the National Football League over the last 2 decades under the tutelage of Mike McCarthy in this offense. But it's not just the offensive side of the ball, guys. It's also the defensive side of the ball that I think is getting upgraded schematically. And I said when the Steelers made the Mike McCarthy hire that the defensive coordinator hire was going to be almost just as important as the head coaching hire, because plain simply, you have a lot of money invested and a lot of talent invested on the defensive side of the ball. You have to find the right person to get the most out of this group. And I think he found the right individual here in Patrick Graham. Graham was one of my top people on my list that I would have considered for the position. And the reason for that is his versatility. It's his ability to get the most out of what he's given. And by the way, guys, this is by far the most talent he's ever had to work with on a defense, whether it was with the Giants, whether it was with the Raiders, whether it was with the Miami Dolphins. He usually wasn't given all that much talent to work with, and he kind of made the most out of the talent that he was given. And now he gets TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, Cam Hayward if he comes back, Derek Harmon, Jalen Ramsey, Deshaun Elliott, Joey Porter Jr. It's by far the most amount of talent he's ever had to work with, and I can't wait to see him take his kind of multiple approach, that Belichickian type of approach, and apply it to this Steelers defense. And guys, Mike Tomlin and Teryl Austin, even though they were defensive-minded individuals, really failed to properly adapt. Their defense was something that really put especially linebackers in really tough spots consistently in coverage, and that's why you've seen guys like Robert Spillane, Devin Bush, Patrick Queen play better elsewhere outside of this system. Also, it really relied on single high coverage when the league is really moving more towards two high safety coverages and all that different stuff. Tomlin and Austin, didn't get the most out of this group, and I'm hoping that Patrick Graham is going to be able to do that, and his superpower is his ability to adapt. I mean, Mike Tomlin and Teryl Austin were living in the past from a defensive schematic standpoint. Patrick Graham has run everything from a man-heavy Belichickian-style defense to, a two high safety quarters-heavy defense. He's run, the Seattle 3 with Pete Carroll last year. He's run a lot of different stuff, and he molds his defensive scheme and his game plans based on the opponent every week and based on the talent that he has at his disposal. And I think that adaptability is going to make this Steelers defense particularly dangerous week in and week out as we approach the 2026 season. And then another thing that I really love about the defensive side of things here, and something that I think is going to be an upgrade, is I think Mike McCarthy will return the true nose tackle to the Steelers defense. I mean, Mike Tomlin and Teryl Austin said it seemed like every single offseason, we don't really believe in traditional nose tackles anymore. And, because of that, they kind of put Keanu Benson at nose tackle for many years. And in my opinion, that was a giant miscasting. And this was a big issue with Mike Tomlin, is that he would put people in positions where, they weren't very good. I mean, he would miscast, left guards and put them at right guard. And then, they go somewhere else and play left guard and they're amazing. Look at Kevin Dotson, for example, right? But, I think it's the other way around. But Keanu Benson is a 4-eye. He is a disruptive type of, athletic disruptor over the middle of the defensive line. He's not somebody that's going to take on double teams and anchor and hold that line of scrimmage. He just doesn't have the play strength in order to do that, but that was the role he was asked to play in this defense under Mike Tomlin and Teryl Austin. And, it really led to some big issues in run defense, particularly over the last 2 years here in Pittsburgh. But now this new regime with Mike McCarthy and now Patrick Graham can finally fix this issue. They can actually get a legit big boy run plugger at one tech here in this defense. And I'm excited to see what that looks like, because I think that is something that can instantly make this Steelers run defense better. It's going to make the linebackers better because there's not a defensive lineman getting blown off his gap, which is going to make their job a lot easier. And I just think that, having that piece in the middle just sets the foundation for everything in run defense. The Steelers haven't had that the last couple of years. I think they can finally make that transition back so that their run defense can be more sturdy moving forward. But in the end, guys, I think it is possible because of all these things that we've talked about today, the embracing of analytics and modernizing the organization, the offensive focus in an offensive league, quarterback development to find the next franchise quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then I think you're upgrading the defensive scheme as well. I think heading into 2026, even though you're not getting Mike Tomlin's dynamic leadership and charisma and culture building under Mike McCarthy, I think schematically and organizationally, there are a lot of upgrades here that I think you can look at, and you can say that this team is in a better position to take that next step and go from 10 wins over the last 3 years to maybe 11, 12, maybe even 13 wins next year, win another division, and maybe put yourself in position to compete for a Lombardi trophy if, of course, the offseason goes the way that it should. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Will Pittsburgh win over or under 10.5 wins next season? Type O if you think that they win 11 or more games next year in Mike McCarthy's first year here in Pittsburgh, or type U if you think they win 10 or less games here in 2026. And that'll be it for our first video here on Steelers Talk today, guys. We're going to be getting live later this afternoon. Me and Ponzi will be going live for our second live show of the week. We got our latest mock draft, our latest mailbag, all that great stuff coming up later today, guys. So make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already to never miss any of our free content all throughout the 2026 offseason.